Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Today we're going to be talking about a pretty special 22 caliber pistol. It's special to me because I've been around guns forever and this thing has always been kind of a legend. Well, I don't actually have the legend. I have the modern production version of the legend, the Olympic Arms Wolverine, which that has got to be the most space-age looking gun ever, especially when it was made in aluminum with nickel plating. And I'm just astonished that one of these never showed up as a prop in Star Wars. Now, in the mid-1950s, the futuristic space-age aesthetic was huge. We saw it in fins on cars with taillights that looked like rocket engines and all manner of other silliness. And in the mid-50s, the Whitney company produced the Wolverine, a 22 caliber pistol. And despite the fact that it was only named the Wolverine for a relatively brief time, there were some trademark issues. And it was renamed as the Lightning and then later just as the Whitney. It is known to this day as the Wolverine. Now, they produced about 10,000 of these between 1956 and 1907 before selling the business because of financial difficulties. The next owner produced about 3,000 pistols before folding up shop in the early 1960s. So there's not a ton of these out there. And there are some changes from the original. The aesthetic has changed slightly. You can see this hollow place here was not there on the original pistols. And this rib was not really there on the aluminum pistols. But other than that, functionally and in its manner of operation, it is basically the original pistol. That and the small detail of that the receiver is made out of polymer now. And these were produced by Olympic Arms in Olympia, Washington, between 2002 and 2017. And like the original, they did not enjoy great commercial success. Which is kind of a shame because essentially, basically it's a good design. Now, there's a whole breakdown of all of the mistakes around production and marketing of these guns on Forgotten Weapons. Ian covers them in great detail and does a very good job. This is, of course, one of the modern guns, and it is polymer. And we'll have a closer look at the details of that on the tabletop. So, what's it like to shoot? As you can see, that did not go at all well. And one of the range officers at the range actually used to work for Olympic Arms, and he said the magazines were produced by a third party, and they were the bane of the gun's existence. Now, I did try to tweak the feed lips on the magazine without success. They were visibly out of spec, but it was to no avail. So taking it home, I employed sophisticated gunsmithing tools to alter the magazine and got the gun to work pretty well. So as you can see from the second attempt, the gun is running pretty well. But reliability is highly situational. I tried it with the old standard CCI mini mags, and it does not like them at all, which is kind of surprising. When it did cycle them, which was rare, I often got failures to ignite, which I'm a little shocked by because CCI mini mag is just the go-to 22 ammo. Now, Federal Punch did not work. This was less of a surprise because it's an old design. But weirdly, CCI Stingers, which have a reputation for being problematic in semi-automatic pistols, especially older ones, ran like a champ. And Arms Corps Precision 22 long rifle, which is by no means elite or expensive ammunition, also cycles the gun flawlessly, so it is situationally reliable. So the gun has a lot of interesting features, and it was actually a pretty innovative design. So let's go to the tabletop and have a look at that. So the Wolverine is not at all a small pistol, being a full 9 inches long and 5 1/4 inches tall. So it is a full-size pistol. It does not weigh like a full-size pistol. It's very light, and that is because the body of it is a single injection molded piece of polymer, with the exception of this steel plate that covers the working parts of the trigger group and helps retain the safety at the rear. So, and that's interesting because they actually had, at the factory when these were being made, a plastic prototype, sort of prototype. The whole story is on Forgotten Weapons. That actually worked fine, but it was not felt that the market would tolerate such a thing in the 1950s, and they were probably correct. But by 2002, it was a whole different ballgame. Now you can see it has Whitney blazoned on the side, and various, warnings and the usual kind of crap. This is an extremely raked handle angle, but it feels quite good in the hand, and it points very surprisingly naturally. It's like they looked at the grip angle on the Luger and said, "Hold my beer." And it is a rather handsome pistol. Now, for takedown, there's a plunger here at the muzzle. You depress that, unscrew this, and then you can withdraw the entire recoil assembly, barrel, and bolt out the rear of the pistol if the hammer is cocked. You may need to press down on the hammer a little bit with a screwdriver or something to get it clear, but it all comes out in one piece. But there are some very small, very fussy little parts that are extremely easy to lose when you do so, and also YouTube loses their shit when I take guns apart. So we're not going to do that. You can see the whole thing on Ian's channel, which is magically exempt from those restrictions. Now, the safety is, of course, not ambidextrous because it's the 1950s, and what kind of freak is left-handed? The safety operates the opposite of most pistol safeties that we're used to, in that down is safe and up is off. However, this is pretty easy to use, and I didn't find it any sort of real impediment. The trigger pull is 3 pounds and breaks pretty crisply, but there's significant over travel, and the reset is nice and short. It's pretty pleasant to use, and the gun is very accurate. And of course, there's basically no felt recoil. The hammer is interesting because it's just this flat paddle thing. But when it is fully lowered, it's still easy to grasp the protruding portion to cock the pistol. On the bolt, you have these cocking ears at the rear, which is an aluminum piece that screws into the bolt here. Excuse me. And the bolt extends. It's a fully telescoped bolt, so it actually extends right the way forward over and completely contains the recoil spring. And it's a pretty neat system. Now, the magazine, is released by a heel release, and it holds 10 rounds. And no, it's not the camera angle. It is wider at the bottom than it is at the top. And it was felt that having a nice wide slot would make it easier to insert the magazines, and in fact, it does seem to. Now, the magazine, in the fashion of steeply raked magazines for 22s, you pull down on the follower to load cartridges in, and you can insert a 22 caliber casing in there and use that, or you can use this cunning tool provided by Olympic Arms, which fits through this hole. Well, it's supposed to fit through that hole, but when I got it, it was too big to go in the hole. I have a metal lathe. It took literally seconds to turn it down to an appropriate size. So the way it is meant to be used is to insert it, pull down, and gradually pull it down further and farther as you insert rounds. And this, in practice, works quite well. So it's a really interesting gun, and I'm very glad that I happened across this one. So the Whitney, it's a good gun, underneath it all, despite the magazine problems with the third-party magazine and all this stuff. It's a good design, and it was innovative, and it's certainly cool looking. So why wasn't it a success? For the same reason that a lot of cool, innovative guns don't make it in the marketplace. Business issues. There were issues with the management, distribution, and things like that, and it just never caught on. It didn't help that it was also slightly more expensive than the Ruger Standard, which is not as neat looking, but was a solid, reliable gun with a good reputation. So it is what it is, and it is at least situationally reliable, and I really enjoy shooting it, so I'm going to keep enjoying shooting it, and maybe I can sort out those reliability problems a little bit with some more time with the gun. But I'm very glad to have it. So that's it for this time. I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to you again real soon.